Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sebastian Fernandez. I am the Americas Chapter President at CANIE, and I'm honored to be today with two of our presenters in this session that's going to be covering the COP28 and COP29 reflections. I'm here with Sabo Heleta and with Marian Mensa that are joining us from diverse countries today, so a very international session today, and we're going to be getting a few insights from them, very important for this Climate Action Week at CANIE. For those of you who are new and don't know about CANIE, CANIE stands for Climate Action Network on International Education. So one of the main things we want you to do today is network. So we invite you to use the chat, and then when we get to the Q&A, open your microphones and show on camera and so on. The idea for us here is to network, but just a brief introduction about CANIE is we were founded by a few practitioners in the industry in 2019, a few months before the pandemic, with the main goal of taking our sector into a net zero emissions by 2030. That's the vision that we have as a sector, and we want to achieve that by advocating and by making sustainability and climate action an important topic for our sector in this industry, where of course international means traveling. And if I invite you to check the keynote session that we had for this Climate Action Week, that was on the future of travel and sustainability regarding that. So CANIE had a few awards. We were nominated, shortlisted for the Pioneer Awards. We were also distinguished with the EAIE President's Award. And right now it's a network of, that increased this week. That's great. More than 800 practitioners around the world, with more than 65 signatories of the CANIE Accord, which is a framework to take action on climate. If you want to learn more about the CANIE Accord, we can guide you through that. You can also join CANIE. It's absolutely free. You can go to the CANIE website, create an account. That's what we consider a CANIE member. So we welcome you to go to the CANIE website, create an account, and join us as a CANIE member. But before starting the session today, we want to acknowledge our sponsors for this Climate Action Week. CANIE is 100% grassroots volunteer-run organization. We're just practitioners, and it's a nonprofit where we volunteer our time and our energy into making this sector, let me admit someone, into making this sector more conscious about climate and more and lead on action on climate. So I want to acknowledge our sponsors for today. One is the University of Tasmania, that is taking sustainability in a very forward-thinking way, and we're going to share a video from them right now that is just 1 minute and shows their passion and commitment on this.
How do I feel about the sustainability agenda? Passionate but impatient. As fast as we go, we've always got to be going faster. My colleagues are doing remarkable things, but every time we do a remarkable thing, I know we've got to do more, because we have to solve this now.
The University of Tasmania has a very clear, holistic sustainability agenda. We have embedded it into our overall strategic plan for the university. It has its own framework for sustainability that encompasses 4 main areas of activity that are to be taken into account in all of our decision-making and activities.
The projects we choose always deliver additional environmental and social co-benefits, for example, biodiversity protection, or the creation of jobs for local communities.
And apart from the University of Tasmania, which I love that quote on impatient, because in a way, I also feel we should be moving faster. We want to thank as well Alethea Global Cooperative, which is a work cooperative and sustainability training consultancy focused on creating this sector as more equitable, climate conscious, and sustainable. Founder and managing director of Alethea, CJ Tremblay, who is also one of the founding members of CANIE, is sent us this quote, and she's pleased on sponsoring Climate Action Week. And the main reason why we appreciate a lot our sponsors is, as I said before, CANIE is 100% volunteer run, and in order to keep the lights running and to keep doing what we do, we of course accept and encourage donations from the sector in order to keep doing what we do. In order to do more and support the sector, we need donations, and these sponsors are helping into that. If you or your organization want to donate, that's the link to do it on the CANIE website. Last but not least, before introducing Savo and Marianne, I want to just resume what we are at the Climate Action Week stage. All the recordings, if you're interested in any of these sessions that have already passed yesterday and the day before, are going to be available in the CANIE YouTube account. And right now we are on the COP28 reflections and COP29 preparations. But if you're interested in getting involved with CANIE, one excellent way is through the chapters. That's the first stage and the first way you can connect. And all the chapter meetings are going to be tomorrow. CANIE Americas, which I will be leading, and we're going to be talking about the leadership that NASA is having in this in the sustainability agenda, and also the Europe chapter meeting are going to be tomorrow. So I definitely encourage you to join the chapter meetings tomorrow if you're interested to learn more. And now, yes, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Savo and Marianne. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and get the important material that we're here today. So Savo joined us from not from Durban, but he is an internationalization specialist from Durban University of Technology. And Marianne, I believe, is joining us from France. Marianne, we can't see you. Oh, there we go. So off to you. Thank you very much again for joining us in this Climate Action Week, and off to you.
Thank you. If I can just, before we start, if I can just ask you to enable sharing of the screen for me, so I can share.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Just a second. Should have done that before. Or allow. Okay, let me know if you can now.
Not yet.
I just said you're the co-host. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was getting a confirmation.
Yeah, working now.
We can see your screen now.
So Excellent. So it's a great pleasure to be with you today to share, reflections on CANIE's participation in the COPs, and give you also share the experience we had at COP28, and think about what we could prepare for COP29, because once the CANIE has got this new status of observer organization, it's actually permanent. So it's a long preparation, and we will go back to this. But once it's done, it's it's permanent for the future, and will allow CANIE to participate in all the COPs. Yes, I mean, with Savo, had the chance to participate on short notice to the COP. And let me just give you a quick reflection, background on the COP, that they are organized by UNFCCC, or what we call UN Climate Change. And it's actually, UN climate change ultimate objective is really to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration at the atmosphere at a level that will not be dangerous for human society and enable natural ecosystem to adapt. So that's an ambitious goal if we consider the current situation, but it's actually positive to see that in the climate negotiation, reference is done on this limit that is plus 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that is more ambitious than the Paris Agreement, even if we are in a paradox with a situation where last year, actually, we reached plus 1.5 degrees Celsius on a temporary basis. And so mostly, UNFCCC facilitate this negotiation among parties. Parties are at the state level, at the nation's level, and they are really, they regroup all the countries in the world to actually discuss about, the objective of UN climate change. And there are 4 different negotiation sessions during the year, but the most important is the COP that is hosted every time in a different region of the world to also provide for local mobilization on climate action. And UNFCCC also is responsible for keeping track of the CO2 emissions registry. That's also an important part of its work, and also what we call the NDCs, meaning the implementation plan of CO2 reduction targets by countries. So UN climate change receive all these NDCs and is in charge of analyzing the content, and also looking whether the sum of all these NDCs amount to the target, which right now is clearly not the case. But one thing is, as all the UN organization, UNFCCC is intergovernmental organization where all country has one vote, and decisions are taken by consensus. And yes, on one hand, this has the issue of bringing everyone a consensus for all countries, but on the other hand, you have also this equal representation of countries. So that's something that is really right now attention, and there is a lot of discussion on whether this is efficient enough to move the climate agenda forward. Also, UN climate change with the Marrakesh Partnership is responsible for supporting global climate action with two high-level champions, one on the race for net zero climate mitigation, and on the another one on the race to climate adaptation. And so they are publishing annual report on global climate action that we will be happy to share with you once we have a dedicated space on CANIE's website. Really physically, the COP happen, are very structured with a blue zone, which is a space for the negotiators at the state level. And usually the COPs are opened by heads of states. And in the blue zone also, you have all accredited organizations that are going to inform the process from the perspective of civil society and NGOs, and also other UN organizations. And so this is, as an accredited organization, CANIE has access to this blue zone. Then, the negotiation part is, of course, restricted to delegation from the states, but as observer organization, we can be allowed access to this zone, and we can also team up with other NGOs to give some briefings or recommendation, especially on the theme of the negotiation, because we will see in the next slide that there is one theme per day, and that one is actually dedicated to youth and education. The other one, the green zone, is actually more open to the public, and it's really a place where you can have a lot of local initiatives and also international initiative, but a lot of local initiatives are also displayed there. And also what is worth saying is that now there are a lot of off-site events that happen, in the around the COP itself, and that it's a very rich environment for networking and for learning about climate action. Okay, so next, please. Yes, the accreditation process was a long process because it's a very structured process, 2 years, and at the end, the application is reviewed and approved by the UNFCCC General Assembly itself at the very beginning of the COP. So it means that CANIE's application was approved on 30th of November 2023 this year, and that we received the official confirmation after the COP at end of January, beginning of February 2024. And it's, of course, because they want to leave space for a lot of actors. The number of people allowed to attend the COP is very limited. It's 2 seats for CANIE, but just to give you an idea, only for instance, universities such as NYU or even my university Côte d'Azur are allowed 35 seats for 35,000 people. So in comparison, CANIE with 2 seats is not that in a bad position, but it's very limited. Yes, maybe we will discuss about the benefits and opportunities. but to be really accredited, one is that there are not so many organizations from the international education sector. To my knowledge, there is the association, I think the International Association of Universities. But apart from that, there are some universities that are accredited. Not many, if you consider the number of institutions of higher education worldwide. Very, very few actually. But CANIE might be, the second institution that has been accredited. I haven't gone through the list recently, to be honest, but it's very, 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 very limited. So we have a chance to actually have the herd of international educators heard through CANIE. Okay, so next slide is we have actually this was a large COP, 85,000 people accredited, mainly also because there was, venue, the expo that hosted the Expo 2020 in Dubai. And so, it was really very well and very well organized and large venue. And also the UAE wanted to prove that, they had a kind of also leadership in this arena of climate solution, and particularly the transition to the energy transition. So there were a lot of delegates, but a lot also from the private sector, as maybe Sabo will tell you a little bit later. Each day, 8th of December, what about youth, children education? But frankly speaking, the representation of education, this topic of education is really underestimated in comparison to the impact that it could have in catalyzing climate action. And there was a declaration of 56 ministers of education on the importance of integrating climate action. This was convened by UNESCO, but this was mainly focusing on primary and secondary education and not necessarily tertiary education. It's worth mentioning that universities are present at the COP through research and all the science that is informing the negotiation, but the education part is somehow left aside, even if it's part of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement to catalyze climate action through education. Okay, and there are so different themes that are on the agenda, and cross-cutting themes such as technology and innovation, inclusion, frontline communities that are really already fighting against climate change and really considering climate adaptation as an emergency, and the finance. And next year, COP29 will be very largely about how to finance actually all the transition to a low carbon economy and resilient economy. Okay, so next, please. And I would say, I think I will let Savo give you some key highlights from the COP28.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for attending. And I'm just going to very, very briefly highlight some of the achievements of COP28. We'll provide the slides as well, and we are hoping to have a page on the CANIE website as well where some of the key documents about COPs previous and the last one and upcoming one we can host there so that people have more information about all this. The documents that are linked to this slide are very long. So COP28, like previous COPs, the event itself, like Marianne was talking about, it's very structured. There's a very official kind of diplomatic side to it, where the countries and their representatives are negotiating the documents, the agreements, the commitments. There's a lot of give and take. The COP starts with a proposed document that would kind of guide where the world is going when it comes to climate change and climate action, and then it goes back and forth. The COP28, the process that led to some of these documents and agreements was very difficult. There was a lot of there were huge outcries about what was happening, where things were going, what some of the more powerful countries were trying to get to. And so there was a lot of controversy that you can, find in the news about all this. But at the end of the day, there's an agreement that's called UAE consensus, which is very important. It's a very detailed document that speaks about all the different things and factors and aspects of dealing with climate change and various aspects in terms of transition to climate action and all that. But one of the key things that the UAE consensus speaks about is that for the first time in the history of COPs, that there's agreement that's been signed by all the different countries speaks about the transition away from fossil fuels. And it specifically mentions that this transition has to happen in a just, orderly, and equitable manner. So, one of the key things that we have to consider, especially because I'm assuming all of us are in higher education, we do research, teach, work with students, and are interested in climate action. It's very important for us to really look at very carefully and critically at all these documents and agreements that are coming out and read in between the lines. It's very easy to say, we want net zero by 2050, but it's very important to ask questions of these documents and commitments by governments in terms of what exactly are you committing to and how are you planning to actually act? In what way are you going to do it, and how will the countries affected the most, how will those countries be supported in order to get to what they say is a just, orderly, and equitable manner in terms of transition from fossil fuels. Some of the key highlights, again, in more detail in terms of COP28, for the first time, we have a global stocktake, which takes basically is an inventory of climate action since the Paris Agreement, looking at the achievements, the issues, the challenges, the possibilities, what are the solutions as we approach 2030 and beyond. So for the first time, as I mentioned, COP speaks about transitioning away from fossil fuels, but critics are very careful and very critical in terms of the language being used when we speak about transitioning away from fossil fuels. And as Marianne was saying earlier, at this COP, there was a record number of delegates, official delegates in the negotiation process that were there to protect the interests of the fossil fuel industry and companies from all over the world. So, when we think about what was achieved, we also have to think about that and the big impact that, the lobby groups were having on the negotiations. There's also an agreement, a very important agreement, at least on paper, on the Loss and Damage Fund, what some activists call climate reparations. And the language is there in terms of what needs to happen. But what is very important to mention also is that what needs to happen needs to be funded. And so the world currently needs around 400 billion US dollars annually to properly deal with loss and damage. There is no money that is committed by countries, especially the countries that have contributed the most to climate destruction. So while only 730 million has been committed, we still need 399 billion to find some way, and the money is not coming. So again, when we talk about climate solutions, when we talk about climate action, when we talk about literal saving of lives across the world, specifically in the global south, there are nice things that are put on paper, and there are no commitments to actually fund what needs to happen. There's also, in terms of funding needs that are not being addressed, there are also commitments to move to renewables, but how are we going to fund the move to renewables, specifically in low income and least developed countries around the world? There isn't really commitment to fund that transition to renewables. So there's a lot of good language, and it's easy to put anything on paper, really, but we are going to judge what is being committed by actions. And there have already been work and research done, and not just research, but various experts and critics have been talking about looking at these documents and saying that while they come to a point, and we can say that some of the achievements from COP28 are positive, there's a lot of for example, looking at the global stocktake. There's a lot of talk about noting the problems, noting the challenges, welcoming the commitment, welcoming the commitments, but beyond that, there isn't really much that really excites us when it comes to the actual action that will follow that. So these are very important things that we need to talk about and think about. And as we start to think about the role of educators, researchers, academics, higher education institutions, networks such as CANIE, we have to think about all this, because for us, it's very important to ask important and critical questions, which are literally about many people's livelihoods, and we need to think about all that. Very brief. So as I said, that this is very brief. We're going to share some of the resources with all of you to be able to go in more detail to see what are we talking about. But before we move into a bit of a discussion, just wanted to give you a few of our just personal, very brief reflections about what we saw at COP28. For me, Marianne was talking about the venue. The venue was impressive. It's a very new venue that was built a few years ago for Expo 2020, which happened at the end of 2021, early 2022, because of the pandemic. This massive Expo city that was built in the middle of the desert, just completely brand new, can accommodate any huge events such as COP28. So the venue was very impressive. And getting to that venue, seeing, a lot of people there, there's a blue zone, there's a green zone, there's a lot of engagement, a lot of different hubs of, possibility and education, all kinds of other things. At first, it looks very impressive. From the venue itself to all kinds of different offerings, and you can go and learn about many things and what different companies are doing, what educational institutions are doing. But then knowing, as I can tell you from my own experience, knowing from research, from work, from engagements, knowing what the needs are, what we need to do, the radical change that we needed yesterday, 10 years ago, not just today. We might be quite late for many things in the world in terms of climate action. Knowing what the needs are and how we need to talk about emissions, cutting emissions drastically, I didn't see much to be hopeful about. What I saw were untested and unproven solutions, tech that will come and save the day. Many companies that are part of the problem when it comes to climate destruction, having these big, very expensive, flashy displays of how now they are going to come and become all green. I mean, the color green of displays of these massive booths, it was just all over the place. And again, it's so easy to print green backgrounds and to say we are green, we are progressive, we are, changing while not really doing much. So for me, that was really challenging and difficult to see all this and not to see the needs that we have in the world and the radical action that we need in the world, not seeing that reflected. Even going to what Marianne was talking about, there was an education hub. First of all, it wasn't, most of it wasn't about higher education at all. Maybe it's higher education's fault that, higher education wasn't there. But also, it was almost like an education fair. Selling of the products, we are doing this, come and join us, come study abroad here or there. It was like any international education conference where, providers are selling their products. Again, going there, hoping for more, expecting more, and then not finding it, for me, that was a bit difficult, because I was going there hoping that I'll find something positive, exciting, that there's a direction, positive direction where we're going. I didn't see it. So it's difficult, again, to be just negative, but we have to be real about these things. And I think there's a lot of food for thought there. Marianne, you?
Yes, well, I mean, just to briefly, because Savo, yes, I mean, we all, got really overwhelmed by, all this display of, large companies and the technology that they were promoting, I think it's something that needs to be taken into consideration. But I would try to complement what you just highlighted by saying that, to me, one of the positive observation was first the engagement of a lot of actors from South Asia nearby. The UAE is very attractive for that region of the world. If you consider that India has become the second largest CO2 emitter, well, that's important, and also that it's a very vulnerable country. I think it's very important to have sensitized and attracted some attention from this region of the world, and also what was in a sense positive. It was all the debate on food. Also food security, because Dubai is well placed to see that climate is going to have an impact on agriculture and not on agriculture in Dubai, because there is not much agriculture around Dubai, but food security. Food security is a big issue in the future, and there was a lot of discussion on that. Then for the funding, I saw somewhere, and this might be shocking, but it's true, carbon is money. That was, really written like this, carbon is money. And that's how, some actors were considering climate change in the COPs. It's just eye-opening on, the diversity of point of view, because you have really people from and actors from all over the world, each coming with its own agenda, its own culture, and its own objective, and also, coming with very different background history on. So how can we? Can UNFCCC, UN Climate Change, embark all these different actors on the road to net zero and resiliency? It's a question that is very valid for everyone, because when you go to these COPs, you just realize, wow, that it's the diversity and all the divide of the world that are in one place, but hopefully there still can be some agreements on principle, intention, and then of course they have to be implemented and to materialize. On one hand, you had the $700 million committed for the loss and funds, but on the other hand, at the end of the COP, the UAE committed to a $30 billion fund to finance the energy transition. So you can see, where the priorities were, and certainly the UN wants in the next COP to focus on financing, net zero and climate adaptation in a much bigger scale, at a much bigger scale. Okay, so now we want to leave some really time for, quickly, the preparation for the COP29 will happen in Azerbaijan, in Baku, which, well, to me, will not steer more observation than you can just read read a lot about what is said on this COP29. The next one will happen in Brazil, and I think it will be a much more open arena for climate discussion and for advancement progress on the climate agenda. But a lot of is happening between the COPs, so we think that it will be great to have a kind of special group of special interest within CANIE, where we could share some documents that are released by UNFCCC to inform also the discussion within CANIE on how we can contribute to the COPs and to advancing the climate discussion. So we have two questions for you. What role should academics, researchers, scholars, higher education, such as CANIE, have a play in terms of participation in the future COPs? And how can we, through education, science, research, engagement, play a role in promotion of meaningful climate action, just transition, and climate justice at COPs? Who would like to, react on this?
Thank you, Marianne. And while we get some people encouraged to speak out, I just want to thank you on the reflections. Just one question for both of you from my side. Was this your first COP, or you had been there before?
So for me, no, it was not my first COP, because prior to joining academia, I was working for the French Development Agency, and also I worked for a United Nations Development Program.
Okay.
So I have this background that actually enabled me to conduct the accreditation of CANIE. I think that's great. Otherwise, it's cumbersome process.
I assumed it was not the first one, but comparing how do you feel that this one was compared to the previous ones you have been going? Because I am in a way thinking the same as Savo, is like a lot of flashy lights, a lot of green backgrounds, but not a lot of action. So how do you see it from your sides comparing what has been happening in the past?
Well, I mean, you know, I have been to COP21, for instance. So the COP21 with the Paris Agreement was a type of, you know, some after years and years of failure of getting to an agreement. Remember Copenhagen in 2009. You know, COP21 was really like a big step forward, you know, towards a common goal, and also that needed to be implemented. And then I mean, I've been also to COP26, for instance, and COP26, you know, was seen as a failure in a sense, because of India, you know, really downsizing the text. And you know, you had a lot of engagement of civil society in these two COPs, because also of you know, the democratic process, the civil engagement, all what was happening was very exciting. And there, at the COP28, it was a very different environment. But at the same time, you know, we are all interdependent. And what I believe is that all countries needs to be engaged in the process, because what happens in Dubai will impact us here, you know, in Europe or in the US. So how do you actually trigger engagement, looking at the culture and at the values? And one of the interesting value in the UAE that we might not have so much in Europe or maybe in other continents is legacy. What do you leave to future generation? Because here in Europe, we have very short-term political agenda and maybe not long-term, you know, with a long-term vision. In the UAE, they, in a sense, are very proud of what I have achieved, and they are looking forward. And this is why they are moving to think about the after fossil fuel era.
And it was surprising for me that this agreement on stepping away from fossil fuels came exactly in Dubai, which, you know, the agreement is there, but it's not an agreement like Paris. You know, it's like a little bit flashy. But I see Stephen opening his camera, so maybe Stephen, you want to contribute here?
First of all, thank you. So far, it's been very interesting, this session today, like the other previous sessions this week. And my question goes to your very first question on the slide, is that you want to know what we can do, CANIE can do in terms of participation, but I'm not sure what the limits are of what we can do. So I need a kind of understanding what we can and can't do before kind of suggesting what we could do, if you see what I mean. It's circular, but I'm not sure the limits of our representatives, what they could do.
Yes, maybe in the next slide, we have some recommendations because, you know, NGOs, observer organizations are really encouraged to regroup and to, you know, be part of networks. And when we were there, we met with Higher Education Climate Network of Networks. That has a direct relationship with the high-level champions on the race to net zero or on the race to resilience. And I think that it would be fantastic if CANIE could be part of this network of networks, because you know, we would be able to have a more direct influence on the high-level champions. Then, you know, you have also in the formal negotiation process, NGOs are regrouped according to their sectors of activities. Education, in a sense, is really belongs, higher education would belong to two different groups. One is called Ringo, that is more on research, and the other one is the education group. There are focal points for these groups of NGOs that we could, also be relating to and maybe insisting on, we could communicate and give them some papers or some, inform them of the CANIE Accord, for instance. That would be some possibilities. There would be a possibility to, maybe have also some participation as a COP, in the COP themselves, even if the seats are limited. We were talking about possibly splitting, the 2 weeks, so that we would have at least 4 people on site attending, and maybe a delegation of people who would be interested in also being in the green zone. So there is a call for project for side events and exhibition booths. Unfortunately, because CANIE doesn't have much funding, I don't think that we could afford. For instance, a booth at the COP28 was $30,000 just for like a 10-meter exhibition booth. You can imagine that it's much above CANIE's resources right now, but maybe not in the future.
If I can just come in, I think we what Marianne and I were hoping to get out of this engagement is just to start a conversation. So when we ask those questions, we really also asking ourselves and everybody else, and we're hoping to, we mentioned our hope to have something like a special interest group of people who are interested in thinking about the next COP and future COPs in terms of, in what way we can get involved, with which other networks and associations we can work together, which climate activists we want to talk to, which climate activists that are working, around the world we want to bring in to speak to CANIE and its members, what position papers we want to maybe, co-author with other networks. So and also in what way do we as CANIE members, individuals, how do we make an impact to our own associations, organizations, universities? In many ways, I work in South African higher education, and we have a few CANIE members who are from South African higher education, but this is not a priority in any way that we can think of most universities. It's it's kind of like business, going back to business as usual, pre-pandemic business as usual, mobility, fly around to get more students to come to your university and all that. So we have to find different ways to think about all this and to get people interested. And also we always have to remember, our purpose is to cut down emissions. So we also are not interested in getting 50 people to fly to Baku, for example, just to be there representing CANIE. So we have to also think about in what way can we make a difference, not just at the COP, at the event, but in between, throughout. There are different kinds of negotiations happening. How can we influence the more positive direction of some of these engagements in different ways? Who should be our allies? And also, I think it's also important to learn about how COPs work, because it could already be quite late for COP29 for us to put things on the agenda, but we might be having to consider something bigger for CANIE and for us in terms of the COP in Brazil. So we're hoping to get more people to think with us about this and what we can possibly do.
Yeah, I just saw very quickly because a question on the Anthropocene. I'm not sure whether they are an accredited organization. What if you are in contact with them, what I would really recommend is to start the accreditation process now, because it will take 2 years. So meaning that if they want to be part of COP30, they definitely should start now. And I think they might get an accreditation for the COP30, but for the COP29 it will be too late anyway. Yes, so I was just really here showing the last also slide on the recommendations for CANIE. You see the idea of really liaising with this representative of NGOs that will actually that are going to report to the negotiators would be a first action that we can take easily, but also building, as Savo was saying, a position would be an important step before reaching at these other organizations.
Any other question or any other contribution? I know we're almost due with the timing. If anyone wants to speak up.
So there is a question about the kind of forum where CANIE members could discuss subjects like this one. Sebastian, at some stage there was some a Slack, I think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, within our meetings, but definitely not sure who made that question. I'm not reading it here. Oh.
Marion.
Oh, yeah. So Marion, I believe you probably may be based in France. So I definitely invite you to connect on the CANIE Europe chapter meeting tomorrow, and that's the best way you can connect with like-minded people and continue the conversation. So definitely that's the best starting point. You can connect there with Margarita, with Daniel, and continue the conversation. One last question for me, if there's no other question here in the room, I wanted to ask you, Savo and Marianne, if there was any representation, I wouldn't say by students, but I would say by just young people. I feel that the COPs are for, at least we here in education, none of us would have a job without students. And I always think that students are the most forgotten part of our industry. We make decisions considering what we thought when we were students 20, 30, 50 years ago. And sometimes the students are not listened. And this is definitely a big priority for them. And was there any student representation at the COP, or young people represented at the COP?
Yes, there is, there are some NGOs, and they are regrouped under the, YUNGO, is that what they call YUNGO, Children and Youth Constituency, and they have actually, so yes, I mean, they are structured and they are invited actually to participate in some of the discussion, as observer organization. There is really willingness of the UN system to include youth. However, in my knowledge, in my view, it's not enough.
If I can come in, so there were a lot of young activists from all over the world who were at COP28. Perhaps not as many as they were, for example, in Glasgow. UAE is expensive, especially it was very expensive to be here during COP28. Also, for example, protest is not really allowed here. And I'm based in UAE, so I'm saying here. And so, but there was some room for climate activism because it was allowed in the expo space because it was COP. So it was seen as, it's organized by the UN, and UAE is a host country. So in a way allowing certain things to happen that normally don't happen. But I think what I'm hoping to see more within CANIE is yes, we are in the higher education sector. We work at universities and similar organizations that are linked to the higher education sector. But I'm hoping to get more students involved, and I'm hoping that CANIE works closely and we get to engage more with activists, young and not so young activists around the world, but doing the grassroots work. We need to hear from them. We need to, because it's very easy for us to just remain in the thinking around higher education and how do we make this neoliberal university profitable? Because that's what our university leaders are saying we need to do. But at the same time, we're burning the planet, and it's like, what is happening? Where are we going? And I think we need to get more students organized through CANIE and beyond CANIE, and we need to get student voices into CANIE spaces, not just to come and listen to us talk about climate action, but actually we need to listen to them in terms of their priorities and the world that they live in and the world that's going to be there, for them and for the young generation. So I think, if we can do more of that, I would really, I'm hoping to.
So that's a definitely great idea, Savo. Right now, we do have a student member on the global board at CANIE. That's Vanessa, who actually, all the graphics, the graphic behind you, behind me, that was Vanessa, who actually also not only she's a part of the board, but she also collaborates with the organization of these Climate Action Week. But you gave me the idea to propose to the CANIE leadership to have a student advisory board in which we can listen from students more directly. So I'm going to propose that. So anyone else with any other comment? I know we're due with the timing session. Oh, okay. So thank you, everybody, again for joining us today. Thank you, Marianne and Savo, for your time and for your energy, and for representing CANIE at COP28. It's really it's really an honor to be part of an organization represented at the COP, and advocating to change our ways in this sector. And this was really a global meeting, and this is a global problem, and we need to collaborate to solve it. Okay, well, thank you for everyone and for this exchange and all the great work that you are doing on climate action. We are all really committed to making a difference and making an impact in this field. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. And you will find the recording of this on the CANIE YouTube channel. Bye-bye. Bye.